Redditor asked a question. Deaf people of Reddit, what is the equivalent of having a song stuck in your head? Here are other Redditors answered. But before we proceed to answers, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to my channel where I upload daily videos about best Reddit threads. Deaf person here, it's honestly pretty similar. Rhythms, tapping your foot, etc. Not sure about other people's experiences, but I usually have a static sort of sound replaying in my head. Are you born dead? Yes, thankfully I live to tell the story though. That's a relief. Deaf person here. I will have certain TV show intros or commercials repeatedly play over and over in my head. Mostly stuff that I used to see regularly, such as the Pardon Our Dust commercial Toonami aired when I was in middle school, high school, or the intro to Gargoyles, X-Files, Dragon Ball Z, just to give a few examples. I asked my completely deaf best friend this and she said, the rhythm of the bass in my car, or pictures of things I enjoy. Especially shows I watched as a kid, I can remember probably every scene. After a few more texts, I added the songs she talked about to my playlist so I could turn them on while in my car together. I never really thought of the bass in things until now. I asked my completely deaf best friend this and she said, the rhythm of the bass in my car, or pictures of things I enjoy. Especially shows I watched as a kid, I can remember probably every scene. After a few more texts, I added the songs she talked about to my playlist so I could turn them on while in my car together. I never really thought of the bass in things until now. The Grateful Dead used to have a deaf section at their shows where they would hold balloons which would pick up the bass. So the bass would go through their feet and hand. And they would have people sign the lyrics for the section. I've always thought this was a pretty cool thing to do. Are you saying their gigs are full of the Grateful Deaf? I've been deaf since I was 2. I always get clips of people dancing stuck in my head, like the Carlton dance from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or dancing in the fountain from the Friends theme song. If I had to have a dance stuck in my head, I think I would pick the Carlton. It always makes me chuckle. If you haven't seen it, look up Will Smith's appearance on The Graham Norton Show on YouTube. The Carlton makes a surprise return near the end, and better than ever. IDK about others, but I can feel vibrations. Yes, I am tough, get jealous bitches, which is how I listen to music. I usually listen to New Orleans jazz or rock because I can feel the beat and vibrations the most. There are also heavy bass systems on my speakers in my car and on my Bluetooth so I can feel it better. It's nice. Just be nice when people have their bass up higher, you never know if they have perfect hearing. A fun song to get a rhythmic bass drum massage from is Meshuggah Bleed. Gojira, Remembrance. I asked my deaf uncle what his conscience consisted of, since he's never heard a spoken word. I wondered if it was just an image of his hands signing. I was right. Yeah, that's totally a thing. Deaf people with schizophrenia will hallucinate sign language too. That's kind of terrifying. It's one thing to hear voices but another to have strange floating hands making gestures at you. Actual deaf here, any clear voice that I connected to a word, would be stuck playing in my head. Like Pink's, nah 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 so what in So What music video. Or actual deaf performers such as Rosa Lee Tim, she sing in ASL that have so much of rhythm movement, cannot help but keep seeing and hearing it in my head. Another that could stuck playing in my head is gifs of specific dance or movement. I'm very intrigued by the idea of singing in sign language. I never would have considered such a thing. From the sounds of it, this is different from translating songs to sign language? Sorta, you will need to read the whole lyric to understand better on which sign to use. There are some words that have 2 or 3 different signs, depends on what the word mean. Sometime there are 1 sign for 3 word in the same sentence. So yeah. I'm not deaf, but I had a lot of deaf friends when I lived in Austin. Deaf people still listen to music, they just do it differently than you and I. All my deaf friends had amazing bass systems in their cars. They tend to feel it in their chest. Hip hop and classical are usually popular for people who are deaf. And EDM. I've met dead peeps at the club I used to frequent. Edit, deaf asterisk although. Typing on a phone made for some hilarious side convo. I had a completely deaf friend growing up. In the mid-80s he loved loud heavy rock music. He couldn't hear it, but could feel the beat, and loved it. He especially loved Metallica and AC/DC, and would play it as loud as the stereo would play. I know he got these songs stuck in his head, as we would be out somewhere and he would be tapping his feet to tunes from the albums. This reminds me of an old school cool post of someone's deaf father hugging a stereo to their chest. I'm mute after a surgery didn't go to plan. I hear my voice in my head but sometimes I have different accents, haha. May I ask what the surgery was for? How did it render you unable to speak? I had one large and one smaller venous malformation removed from my throat. Unfortunately, vocal cord damage occurred during the surgery. I was born deaf and later got a cochlear implant, so I can hear relatively well, for a deaf person. I listen to a lot of different music but have noticed that it's usually the simple choruses that get stuck in my head, and I have terrible audio memorization, so it's usually 1 to 2 lines at most on loop. I'm late to this, but I'd like to offer an in-between perspective. Profound hearing impairment, can't hear the upper 1/2 or so of normal human range, the lower half is pretty quiet compared to the average human. Despite this, I'm very into music. I play guitar, I produce hip-hop, pop, electronic, and I DJ for fun. Anyway, the nature of my hearing impairment, like many, make it extremely hard to understand speech. Because of this, I will frequently have a song stuck in my head, but because I never know the lyrics to song unless I look them up and study them extensively, I pretty much just glaze over the lyrics and sing the tune, melody with the random gibberish it sounds like to me instead. Come to think of it, this is funny because I just realized as much as I love hip-hop, I frequently sleep on great artist songs because whether or not I like a song depends entirely on if their flow, voice is catchy, regardless of their bars, because it's just another instrument to me. I really envy people who can pick up lyrics no problem. Always kind of sucks when I'm at a party and someone looks at me while singing the lyrics and I kind of just shrug instead of locking in with them. I wonder how it feels to read without knowing how the words sound or saying them in your head or even thinking. Not deaf here, but extreme visual learner. I don't hear words when I read them. I see either the text of them or what they represent in my head. For example, solving a math problem, I literally see numbers written down and it's solved on paper in my head. I never hear it. I do have SPD, sensory processing disorder, though. Which could be why I'm so visual. I was extremely sound sensitive as a child, and still am to some extent. It can make discerning what I am hearing difficult. I hear it fine, it's just hard for me to separate from everything else. My sister always got the equivalent of sign language tongue twisters stuck in her head. She would be idly doing something and signing twisters. If you play piano or guitar, you can sort of make out what sounds are like through vibration. I read this as dead people. Spelling makes a huge difference in the answering get. Actual deaf guy here. Well, I was deaf since mid-2015, so I wasn't born deaf, and I used to have a cochlear implant, but sadly it doesn't work anymore since it's getting old and now it's in my cabinet. I would have some YouTube videos, TV shows, movies, cartoons I seen repeatedly play over my dead, and maybe some music I hear. Like I said, I used to have a cochlear implant until it died permanently last month, and I would have some jazz music playing on my head, and some memories I have also appeared on my head, but it usually depends on the day though. Remembering my old memories TBH, sometimes I hate growing up. I mean, remember stuff from the past is depressing, especially seeing old commercials that aired during late 2000s and early to mid 2010s. All the good questions get ignored on this subreddit. Don't think the deaf community is big enough to make this blow up. Edit. Also, all the good questions get ignored on this subreddit. Well, this post is actually in the process of blowing up. It's all just cringy sex questions now. Most of the popular questions have NSFW tags. That's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. Make sure to like this video, subscribe and turn bell notification to not miss out any of my future